We are recording this session, and we will make the recording available after the session to everybody on our email list and on our website. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Beth McConnell. I'm the Policy Director at the Philadelphia Association of CDCs. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you all enjoyed the plenary conversation that just wrapped up with Dr. Andre Perry and Jamira Burley and our moderator, Ania Moore. On this session, we're going to be which is going to be led by Art Gimenez from PIDC, so I'm going to turn it over to him in just a second. But just one quick logistical item. If you have something you want to express, an idea or acknowledgement or a thanks or a hello, you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. If you actually want to pose a question to any of our panelists, please use the Q&A function. You can feel free to put questions in at any time, at any point during the session, but we'll probably answer them towards the end of the session. But it's perfectly fine if the question pops into your head, you can go ahead and throw it in there, and we'll come back to those Q&A after the presentations. So with that, I'm going to turn my camera off and my mic off and kick it over to you, Art.
Thanks, Beth. Let me share my screen here. Does that look good, Beth?
Great. Okay,
thank you. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining our session here. My name is Arthur Gimenez. I work for PIDC, especially in the business lending division. But PIDC, I'll go over the what we do. But right now, we are a nonprofit, 60 years old, that's really invested in helping grow Philadelphia. And we're going to talk about our specifically the real estate strategies for neighborhood preservation, and specifically about our product, commercial mortgage. But before we get into that, let's take a step back and talk about Philadelphia. We believe Philadelphia is a city on the rise. The population is growing. It's now 1.6 million people. That's the second largest in the East Coast. Even though we're in a pandemic, the job base has been growing. It's the highest employment in decades. The count we have here is 738,000. And we are now one of the top U.S. destinations to live, work, and visit, with 43 million visitors in 2018. But unfortunately, Philadelphia is also one of America's poorest, largest cities. So we have unfortunately, very high poverty rate of about 26%, which is the highest among the Americas, with the largest 10 cities. That's about 400,000 residents that live below the poverty line. 400,000 residents, 37% of them are under the age of 18 years old. And unfortunately, this has been 30 years of this persistent poverty. So this is how we've really formed our vision of PIDC and what we want to see the economy to be. PIDC's vision is to have a Philadelphia economy that is growing, diversified, and inclusive, and producing high quality of life for all residents, businesses, visitors, and workers. And to implement this vision, our mission is to connect people, places, opportunities, and spur investments, support business growth, which we'll be focused on today, and foster developments that create jobs, revitalize neighborhoods, and drive growth to every corner of Philadelphia. And we do this by having 3 core strategies: supporting growing businesses, investing in high impact community revitalization. So these are more larger scale projects, and creating workplaces of the future, which is, for example, like the Navy Yards. So today we'll be focused on supporting growing businesses. And why do we do that? Well, we all know that small businesses are drivers of the local economy. They create jobs, they build wealth for the citizens and entrepreneurs, and they help to stabilize neighborhoods. And there's really 2 ways we do that. We provide access to capital through our loan products, and also we provide technical assistance, or we also call that business support services, to our clients and prospects as well. So also just to talk about types of financing. If you are looking to purchase a property, there's usually different types of debt that is involved, or even some government sources that are available. I won't go through all of this, but I just really want to show the role that PIDC plays. Typically, we are the gap filler in these situations. So if you are able to get bank financing, that might be a portion of the acquisition cost of a property. There could be some hard debt too. This is more speculative if there's construction involved. And then if you're lucky enough, there could be some tax incentives, some government sources of subsidy that can play a role as well in that budget. So PIDC is usually a gap filler. Sometimes we're the only lender, but most times we are usually trying to fill a gap and not competing with the banks, but really supplementing what they provide so that your project can move forward. So we do that by one of our products is a commercial mortgage loan. I think it's our third year now providing this directly to small businesses. So it's really supporting small businesses and nonprofits. And it's really helping to finance the purchasing properties that are they currently occupying or they intend to relocate to. And these loans are really prioritizing small businesses owned by minorities, women, immigrants, veterans, or other disadvantaged populations, as well as nonprofits and businesses located in low-income communities. These are really loans that are not always available at your traditional bank, or they're too small. So our loan size go from 50,000 up to 500,000. And some banks they're just too big to really pay attention to the smaller mortgages. So that's why we created this product to make sure it's available and inexpensive. So we're lucky here to have two speakers with us to help talk about their experience of how they identified a property and how they worked with us at PIDC. So I'd like to introduce both David Sims, who's the owner of Eatible Delights, and Rich Olaya, a principal now of OZ Collaborative. So I'm going to ask each of them to speak and talk a little bit of background. And why don't we start with you, David? Please introduce yourself and give us a little background of your business.
So I'm David Sims, and I am the proprietor and artist of Eatible Delights catering service. And who we are and what we are is a full-service off-premise catering company that's been in existence now for over 20 years. Primarily what we do is we do catering, not just in the Philadelphia and the 5-county area, but we're often in Washington, D.C., sometimes in New Jersey, sometimes in New York, and just looking to continue to evolve and to make our stake and claim in the city of Philadelphia. Recently, because of COVID-19, we have quickly pivoted to becoming a takeout, curbside, and delivery restaurant where we are providing food from Tuesday to Saturday from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And what's most importantly that I'm very proud of is that we don't have those 6-mile boundaries that, say, for instance, your DoorDash or your one of your other places might have, like Black and Mobile or Uber Eats. We have clients in Morristown, New Jersey. We have clients in Newtown, Washington's Crossing, Yardley. We even do a Friday delivery as far south as Delaware, as Newcastle, Delaware. So really excited about being here on this corridor and really excited about the possibilities of what the future holds.
Thanks for that, David. How about you, Rich? Can you give us an introduction of yourself and brief background on your business?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Rich Olaya. I am the principal. I am one of the two principals at OZ Collaborative. We're an architectural design firm based in West Philadelphia. About a year ago, OZ Collaborative was formed through the merger of two other architectural firms, my firm, which was Olaya Studio, which I had for 13 years, and BWA Architecture and Planning, which was an existing firm that was also around for close to 30 years. So we joined forces. I purchased a building on Baltimore Avenue and we moved our office into this location. We work with a range of clients through the Philadelphia region, including nonprofit clients, many of which I believe are attendees to today's event. We also work with a lot of universities in the region. We work with some of the large commercial developers in the region as well. And we work with a lot of the religious and faith-based groups. So we have a nice range of work that we do throughout the Philadelphia region. We've done work up through New York and down to Washington, D.C., Howard University specifically. And so our work includes new construction, contemporary architecture, historic restoration, adaptive reuse. So it's a nice range of all of the above. So.
Thanks, Rich. Very interesting. Let's start with you, David. Let's go back to you. Tell me about like your situation before you purchased your property. Were you leasing before? Were you in a different location? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I was a 13-year tenant to what I would like to call a slumlord. I spent 13 years on Ridge Avenue. Prior to that, I was on Lehigh Avenue for 3 years. And when I left Lehigh Avenue, I moved to Ridge Avenue. I didn't even have the concept, and I'm going back to 2006. I didn't even have the concept about purchasing a building. Literally, I gave one of my customers in my restaurant $5,000 for a property that I hadn't even seen. I just said, okay, you've got a property and I need a bigger place. Here's my money. Foolish one I was, and I'm okay with it because we reconciled and we've become great friends today. But from 2016 to 2019, I spent the 24th and Ridge, and that was everything that you could have managed. I was a community anchor by doing various things for the community, holiday lighting ceremony for 10 years or for 9 years. It just became too much. I didn't have the mindset when I moved there to purchase, but it was, things, I encompassed the kitchen ceiling fell and the landlord wouldn't fix it. And numerous backups and plumbing problems and issues and lead pipes that began to decapitate because it wasn't properly done. But I felt for the first 10 years that I was stuck. I couldn't do any better. So finally, after the ceiling collapsed and then being in a building where the concrete was decaying outside and rats were coming in the building, I was like, it's time to go. I put the energy out there and I was like, it's time to go. They then put the property in the hands of a commercial real estate company who sent me a nice welcome letter, but 30 days after that sent me a letter 30 days to vacate because they said I was behind in my rent. Learned a lot about that, learned that it's all a game because when we went to court, it was postponed. And when I went back to court a second time, it was postponed. So I think that by the third time, the judge was like, we can't postpone this anymore. I was very angry because I knew all of the money that I had put into that building. When you've got sewage problems, you don't call the landlord when you're dealing with food. You just fix it. You beg and you plead and you get a plumber there in an hour. Mm-hmm. So, I asked my accountant, I said, can we afford to buy a building? And she said, with the numbers you're doing, hell yeah. So, I went to a few lenders and I landed at PIDC and very, very happy to have made that transition from Ridge Avenue to Wadsworth.
Mm-hmm. I'll show a picture here of your property. So give me how'd you find this property and what have you done to it since you've acquired it?
So I found the property because one of the things that I want to tell all of the listeners is it's not just important about having great relationships with people like PIDC or probably what Richard and I will have after this or what Beth and I already have. It's important that you have great relationships with your council people, your state representatives, and other business owners. Those business relationships is what's going to catapult you or help you to become as successful as you want to be. So having a relationship with City Councilwoman Sorrell Parker, I already knew about this place because I actually knew that there was a caterer that was here. I still was in the mindset of, well, I want to get off Ridge Avenue, I'm going to rent. Well, come to find out that the owner of the building was actually my client for catering. So then I thought about talking to him. We had a brief conversation. I found out that my mortgage would be in the same amount of money as I was paying for rent. Where I was coming from, it was easy. I was coming from a dump to a castle. So being on another business corridor that was busier than Ridge Avenue, it was exciting for me. The things that I've done since I've been here, I found out that there were some challenges. I've had to put a new roof on. I found out yesterday that the motor on the exhaust fan that feeds the smoke out of my restaurant, the motor went. Well, when I went to settlement and the person that did my appraisal and did my, I forgot what you call it, but he didn't catch that. So I had to put a new motor on an exhaust system. But I am happy to say that I am happy to put the motor on my exhaust system rather than the exhaust system of the place that I was on Ridge Avenue,
Right.
that I put one there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bring up a good point. And if you do have to fix a property that you rent, and you're improving the property, you can't take those improvements with you usually. You can take a desk or some equipment, but if it's like a hood or something you repair, that machine you're talking about, it usually has to stay. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Um,
And I
how
was
about you?
definitely triple net.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the burden's on you as well. Okay. How about you, Rich? How about the property you're now in? How did you find that? And
So yeah, so this is a interesting story as well. We're on 4818 Baltimore Avenue. We're like in the heart of the Baltimore Avenue business corridor. I think the cover page of your slide had Dock Street, which is just up the street here.
Right on 50th in Baltimore.
On 50th in Baltimore, right? Another PIDC client. And we're, I think, 2 doors from the Mariposa Co-op, which is a grocery store, which is another kind of neighborhood landmark. And so my practice started in 2006, as I said earlier, as Olaya Studio. And when I started my practice, I was working from home. I live in West Philly, and so I was fortunate to have this large house that has a separate apartment with a private entrance on the 3rd floor. So I turned the apartment into an office, which worked out great, except over the years, as the office grew, it just became untenable to have that many people in the office. It became like a speakeasy office, if you will. And so I had to come up with a plan. And so not having to pay a landlord rent, just essentially kind of paying myself the rent. If I had paid myself rent, it would be to myself. Not having paid a landlord rent, I didn't want to go into that model of paying rent to a landlord. And so I always wanted to have a building that I could buy, renovate, or a space that I could buy. One of the things that I was looking at originally was buying a condo in Old City, like an office condo, and using that as the office, but then also it's an investment for the future. And so the idea of having an investment for the future and having another little piece of real estate that I could then give my sons and so on was important to me, and I thought there was value in that. So I backed out of the Old City scenario because it was too expensive, and just the idea of commuting into town really wasn't essential for me, and I'd really like to stay in West Philly. And so I went around, and there really was nothing like being advertised for sale. So I went and I just took down the addresses of buildings that looked neglected or abandoned or just kind of boarded up. And I sent them letters, and I said, hey, kind of like a feel-good letter. I'm a business owner. I live in the neighborhood. I like where your building is. I'd love to be able to see if we can talk. And, my real estate friend says, those things never work. But lo and behold, it did. And I got a call back from this gentleman. And he's like, oh, that's a great story. Let's talk. And so we talked, and he told me his whole life story. And we started to negotiate the building and the purchase. And so along the way, Marla Hamilton from PIDC has always been a big advocate for my business growth. When she saw me go through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 small businesses, she was always there cheering me on. And so I mentioned this to her, and so she immediately said, we can help you. And so, we started the process to figure out the financing through our conventional lender, which was Customers Bank and PIDC. And so combination of the two really kind of put together the package that I was able to use to do that. As you can see the picture, the building was abandoned. It was completely gutted out, and it had sat dormant for 28 years. It had over those 28 years, it had several people squatting in it, and L&I had had issued citations for building being on the verge of collapse and violations for not maintaining the building properly. And so this gentleman only just did the bare minimum of what we needed to do to keep the building from falling. Actually, the next door neighbor did a lot of repairs so that it wouldn't compromise his building. So I was happy to take a building that was originally a mixed-use building and bring it back to life and be able to kind of inject our little piece of design into it to blend into the character of the street, of the corridor, and the neighborhood. And so now we're here alongside all the other businesses, and so I think it's exciting for us. Initially, I wasn't sure how the staff would respond to commuting to West Philly because the other half of my business partner's office was in Old City, and so we actually took jobs from Old City and we brought them to West Philly. And so everybody has adjusted well. This is, of course, all pre-COVID. Now everybody's working remotely. I come into the building and take care of the plants and take care of the mail and so forth whenever that's necessary. And I'm only down the street, so plus I feel more comfortable working here than at home after having spent so much energy into this space. It's important to kind of use it to me.
You touched on that. My next question, Rich, and then I'll get to you, David. Is so now you're an owner of your property on a commercial corridor. What impact do you think you can bring to your community?
Well, so several different levels of that can be answered in a couple of different ways. I think first and foremost, I think the physical presence of us being on the corridor is kind of an interesting mix. The fact that it used to be a boarded up building and now it's not, I think is just something that is very positive. Most people would agree with that. There was an incident that right when we opened up the building, we had some vandalism. There was some graffiti in the building and my front door got smashed in. And then people were, I think, claiming that my building was displacing people and gentrifying the neighborhood. I don't agree with that. I think it was revitalizing the neighborhood and saving the building. And so there was a little bit of pushback, but overall, I think I've had a lot of positive feedback from the neighborhood, from other business owners. I've lent my building out to an organization that's just down the street, Cure Theater, where we actually lent the conference room for board meetings.
Great.
And we have, an influx of people that are using the building that are in return using the local businesses. And so we're generating money and we're spending it in the micro local economy. And so I think all of those are assets to how a commercial corridor kind of is a quilt of these little pieces that together make something stronger. Individually, they may not be able to stand up, but together, when they're weaved into each other, they provide a much stronger fabric.
Thanks for that, Rich. How about you, David? I know you do a lot for the community when you were on Ridge Ave. How about on Wadsworth now in Northwest?
So I'm kind of like having a quandary anyway, because I committed to doing my holiday lighting ceremony on Ridge Avenue for 10 years. And this would be the 10th year. So I'm still thinking about doing it. Don't know if the grand scale that I usually do it, which is shutting the street down and bringing all the businesses out and having a moon bounce on a stage and entertainment. Wow. I may still just do something at a local community center. But here on Wadsworth Avenue, I plan on continuing to partner with people like City Councilwoman Sherelle Parker to make what she already has, which is a holiday lighting ceremony, even better. When you think about community and giving, it's just not regulated to one area. You can be community and you can be giving in any area of the city. So I'm looking to do some things like a beautification project, like to where it's each and every business has a flower pot outside of their business. Maybe some flags on the light posts, or maybe some flags on each and every business, or those who want it. I'm not thinking that every single business will be just, following behind my marching band. But I plan on doing whatever it is that I need to do to improve this community. Um, and to Richard's point, I want to just kind of like go back just a little bit. And I know I'm going to get some pushback for what I'm about to say. I'm not one that really believes in quote unquote the gentrification of a neighborhood. If Richard is a business owner and he's coming into that neighborhood and he's improving the quality of life, if he's paying his real estate taxes, if he's doing everything that he's supposed to do in a neighborhood, we have to stop saying that something is gentrification. I know that there's examples of it, but the reality of the matter is he's adding to the neighborhood. He's adding value to the neighborhood. And this is really going to set it ablaze. If you've been in your property for 25 years and you haven't done anything to your property, well, unfortunately, shame on you. It's not shame on Richard because he's improved the quality of life in that neighborhood. Hopefully, what some of the people will take from it is, if he can do it, so can I. And that's what I'm looking to do on Wadsworth Avenue. I'm looking to be a staple. I'm looking to get hey, what about instead of Wadsworth Avenue in 25 years, how about Eatable Delights Avenue? Or how about David Sims Avenue? I mean, that's just where I'm at. We need to think about how it is that as business owners, what we're bringing to the neighborhood.
Right. Yeah, I do agree with that.
Well said, David.
Did you want to
Thank you,
say anything to that, Richard?
No, well said, well said. No, I concur with that wholeheartedly. And I think you're right. I think it's easy to just sort of throw shade on anybody that puts up a new building and say that you're from out of town and say that you're a gentrifier. And that's really a conversation that needs to be had, because a lot of times that does happen, that is happening. But when it's somebody like David who's been in the community, or somebody like me who's been in West Philly for 20 years, we have stake. We have, to use the cliche, skin in the game. We are part of the community, and so I think all those things are important to kind of discuss and not just kind of throw blanket statements across.
Right, and I think that's the big differentiators, having skin in the game and being not just owning property, but helping improve on it and improving the lives of people in the community, and not just being a landlord.
Can I just add one little small thing, Art?
Okay, keep it small.
If more people, let me just say this, if more people like Richard and David learned how to utilize the resources of an organization like PIDC, we can all become better business owners. It doesn't have to be always. I'm sure that if I brought a great idea to PIDC, they would be on board. It would be like riding a horse. Like, let's saddle up, let's see what it is that we can do. It doesn't always have to be an idea that is from our pockets. There are partnerships that go along. When I started the holiday lighting ceremony for the first 3 or 4 years, and each year I wanted it to be better, and I was doing everything out of my pocket, I was like, wait a minute, something is wrong with this picture here. I found out how I could use my customers as sponsors. I found out what relationships that I had leveraged. I found out who it is that could do what it is that I could do, to finally, by the 9th year, I was able to not just do for the community, but I would stop going in my pocket to pay for my employees for the 300 meals that we were providing every holiday lighting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate the good words you said for PIDC, and yeah, we're always, and I think the partnership is really ideal. A lot of people come to us individually, like they have their own individual projects, but they come to us as a partnership, or with their neighbors or with other business partners. That really helps us get on board and advocate stronger. Because again, this is really for the for improving the whole city, not just individuals' properties or individual businesses. It's when the community improves, I think we can become a more, I guess, more resourceful. So thank you for saying that. Let's start with you, David. How about pros and cons? So now you've been you've already probably mentioned some already about being the positives of being now property owner. Do you have any more positive you can share, or even some of the negatives now of owning a property? And did you consider that when you were, or are these any like unexpected consequences or something like that?
The pros, in my opinion, there's tons of pros. There's equity in me, there's equity in my brand, there's equity in my credit, there is equity in my business. There is me being able to know now as a business owner that I started this project, that I can go create other projects. Because I'm not done here on Wadsworth Avenue. I'm working on a project right now on 59th and Market. And then I was approached by someone else to start up a coffee shop. As far as the cons, I can't really say that I have any cons yet. Oh, well, yesterday, yes, I had to spend $1,100 or $1,000 for something that I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting a motor to be gone. So if you want to look at that as a con, and the con is that the person that sold me the building that did my inspection report didn't catch that. But I am none the wiser for the next project. So I don't really have a whole lot of cons, and I'm also one that has the affirmative thought process of in every cloud there's a silver lining. The biggest pro is that I had the money available to get it fixed.
Thanks, David. How about you, Rich? Pros and cons.
Similar pros in that there's equity that we're growing, that we're building, as opposed to just paying rent to a landlord. I think for me as an architect, there's the advantage of being able to exercise my own design ideas into something that we could kind of almost use as a showcase. So almost as if the building itself is my business card, my calling card, if you will. And so that's a plus that talks about what I do for a living. You're on the hook as well. So you have a mortgage to pay, and we have these bills to take care of. And so in addressing the situation that we are now with this global pandemic, it has an impact on business, no doubt. It has a direct impact on my business. It's affected Dave's business, and for me, it puts me, it gives me one more thing to stress about, because if I can't run my business the way I plan on running it, then all of a sudden we may have to lay people off, we may have to, downsize, and so that's going to have an impact on whether or not I can afford the mortgage, and whether or not we need to structure the building in some other way. Do we bring in, do we rent out a space of the building to accommodate somebody else that might need like a workstation? So I need to, not that I'm in that situation, but I need to be able to kind of think about that, with all the options on the table, because that's a reality. If I were a tenant, and I'm glad that I'm not, but if I were a tenant, and I can't pay the rent because the space is now twice as big as what I need, then, it's easier to just downsize and to lease only smaller space. Of course, there's, discussions that need to be had with the landlord and so forth. But those, you could scale back out of that and focus on just the business, and then just be able to just pay the rent. So there's pros, there's advantages to just renting and not owning a building, because you don't have to worry about the whole building aspect. So if you have a good landlord relationship, that's a benefit. If you have a landlord like the story David was talking about, where he was just ignoring his calls, then that's a negative experience. And so you bypass all that by taking care of the building. So I think that there's advantages to both, and there's realities to both. I'm optimistic our business is being affected, but we're able to take care of what we need to take care of financially in order to keep operating as we are. It's challenged with how the world is turned upside down for sure. And so we're trying to pivot along those ways and stay relevant and understand where our clients are, because all our clients have been affected in one way or another. And so, so kind of roundabout answer to your question, Art, but it's
fine.
At the end of the day, I think the building gives me the flexibility to adjust and to pivot and to do what we need to do to keep the practice going. So more pros than cons, but it's not all peaches and cream, as they say.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like for both of you, really the pros outweigh the cons. So you would never. I guess my next question: if you ever had to do it over again, would you go back? Would you have purchased, or would you continue leasing? It sounds like it's more the purchasing was more the right decision for you both. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. Sorry, David. I mean, you know, if my practice has the capacity to grow, and so right now we have a staff of 13 people. We could accommodate, 16, 17, 18 people in this building, and once we get to that point, we max out. And so the reality is that we want to continue to grow, and we want to be able to grow out of the space. And so in the future, if that happens, then what do we do? That's a real business decision that we need to kind of take into account. Would I buy another building that would accommodate 25 people? There's a lot of factors that come into play. But would I do this again, knowing everything that I did under these circumstances? Yes, 100%.
Thanks, Rich. How about you, David?
So
I know the answer already, but go ahead.
So rental versus so where I'm going to be moving to at 59th and Market, even though it'll be a rental situation, I won't actually own a building, but it's an office complex. And the reality of the matter is, that is more of a partnership that I'll be entering into. And the coffee shop that I was approached about, it is a potential rental situation, but I've already let the person know I'm not interested in a long-term rental situation, 3 years the most. Rental situations are okay, but learning what I learned from the person that left this building and all that was not done, and putting some of the responsibility on the landlord, because if he had done proper inspections, then he would have known the condition that his building was in. And let me also just say for the record, it wasn't in bad shape. It wasn't. But when you're a tenant, you don't really have the same carrying capacity of what the owner does. So the tenant, he paid his rent, and that was, for him, probably was enough. I wouldn't mind a rental situation again with the right mix, or as I would say in chef's terms, with the right stew and the right ingredients and the right broth and the right brew. But from a standpoint of just going in blindly like I did in the first place, where I left Lehigh Avenue and I moved to Ridge, and just giving somebody $5,000 with no lease and just a hope and a prayer. The hope and a prayer got me to Wadsworth Avenue, but at the same token, I got to be a lot smarter. I have to watch how it is that I do things, because one of the things that we as business owners don't always know when we enter into these things, when we have employees, they become our responsibilities. They are then like our children. So they look to us for anything, everything, nothing, and whatever it is that they can get on a daily basis. So a lot of the decisions that I have to make the mindset of, I've got employees.
Thanks for that, David. I think now is a good time to open it up to the audience. So Beth, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And
Great. Thanks, Art. Yeah, just a reminder, folks, you can put questions in the Q&A box. And we don't have a question yet. We have a comment in here. Shelley White remarked that she was thinking that gentrification was more about pricing out families and equity and ownership, less about business gentrification. One thing I'll just quickly add to that is that you certainly can see businesses get priced out, but if you own the building, you know, that's less likely. So that's one way to prevent against getting priced out, is that ownership stake that you have. Anybody want to comment more on that?
I'll say a brief word on that, which is I think there is some truth to that, that the community overall, as it improves through revitalization, will have just the automatic byproduct of raising prices for the value of properties, and then that trickles into the prices of rent. And so so homeowners or residents that are renting are the ones that are most affected by rising real estate costs. And so that is a factor that comes into play, whether there's a lot of growth happening with business, commercial buildings, or residential buildings. But I think one of the important parts is that when you have a healthy corridor, then you can create a playing field so that you can put in affordable housing models alongside market rate housing products. And so I think there needs to be the conversation of identifying business corridors and identifying developers like the SPAC group, like Ryan SPAC, who is building equitable housing products for moderate and low income families alongside market rate housing. So I think it's a conversation that where you include what's going on with the commercial corridors, but it really needs to be looked at with the prices of what rents are going for. And then the other piece to that, which I didn't mention, was the cost of construction for new development. In this particular area in Philadelphia, the cost of construction is really high compared to other major cities, except the cost of rent, the amount that we get for rent here is very low compared to other major cities. And so then when a developer wants to build something, of course they want to do it and make a profit. They won't do it unless they make a profit, unless they charge high rents. And so that's really the complicated formula that developers need to meet, which is why you're seeing the kinds of buildings being built where the quality of construction for apartments is kind of questionable. Sometimes it's not very attractive. Sometimes it's kind of cheaply built, because they have to meet that very, very fine margin of construction costs and rents. So it's a complicated situation. And I think commercial corridors have an important piece of that. So.
Thank you. We have a question from Jesse Blitzstein. And Jesse, I'm actually gonna unmute you, if that's okay, allow you to talk so you can actually ask the question yourself. You were
Hey guys,
Go ahead,
can you hear
Jesse.
me?
Yes, hey
Jesse.
Jesse.
Yeah, I hear you.
Jesse.
Hey y'all, how's it going?
Good.
And thanks for sharing, and shout out to Art, who I used to work with, and Rich, who we're working on a project right now. And David, nice to hear about what you're doing. You're all doing great stuff, so thank you. Art, I was wondering if you could maybe just walk us through the mechanics more of the loan product itself, at least at a high level as far as the rates and terms. And then maybe even if Rich and David want to jump in on sort of how this compared to some of the other stuff they saw in the market when they were working on their project.
Sure. Great question, Jesse. Yeah, so the process is, well, on top of the loan product, so specifically about the commercial mortgage, it goes up to $500,000. That's kind of the limit we've set right now. We're using some internal funds for that, so we don't have a lot of it. So that's our limit. But that's what we're trying to fill with the gap. And like I said this earlier, a lot of there are a lot of banks out there with more money than we are. So we're not trying to compete with them. We're just providing a gap filler, filling the gap of either they are not lending to small businesses for whatever reason, or they're not lending enough. So that's why we came up with this with that amount. Usually we ask for like 3 years of tax returns. Kind of what's your prospective plan? Is there construction involved? How is this going to improve your business? Help grow your business? How is it going to improve the corridor? We like to focus on more commercial corridors and also corridors that are in low-income communities, because those are also having a hard time getting loans approved. So yeah, we do ask for, the underwriting process does require us to look at the tax returns. We have to be able to show that the business is profitable enough to pay the mortgage. So usually, like I think David said this, usually in the case, if you're purchasing a property and it's like, this depends, I guess, on the purchase price, but usually we want to get to where the rent that you pay is equal to or less than the mortgage you pay. So it's easy for us to show that you've been paying your rent on time for the past years and your business is profitable. It shows that you can afford the mortgage, and that's usually the case that we see. If I see that a business is really taking out a larger property and therefore a larger mortgage payment than they can afford, I'll advise them to watch out for that. But every case is a little bit different. And I would only add, we also look at your personal credit. So all our loans require personal guarantee. So it's not just like insulated on the business profitability. We do look at your personal income as well. And we put all those things. You don't need perfect credit. You just need to show us that you're a responsible borrower. And that's what the part of the analysis we do, is looking at your personal credit. I think that's it. Does that answer your question, Jesse?
Sorry, I disabled his talking, but
Okay.
if he has more follow-up questions, you can definitely put it in the Q&A and we can come back to you, Jesse.
Yeah, and I'll just say too, so rates right now are very low because of the pandemic. So our rate right now is 5.5%. It's been like that for the past 2-3 years. We're going to revisit that, but yeah, so we're not the most competitive product out there. We were never supposed to be. We're not we don't want to compete directly with the larger institutions like Wells Fargo, Bank of America. We just really want to supplement and we keep it affordable as well.
We don't have any other questions in the Q&A right now, but I have a question if I can take the privilege to ask. So, Rich and David, the businesses that you're running, your restaurant and your catering and your design architecture studio is one business. Being a landlord is another business, right? So you're essentially running 2 businesses. How did you learn how to become a landlord, the rules, the regs, the taxes, all the responsibilities that come into that? Were you able to get technical assistance from either PIDC or another provider to help you figure out how to incorporate that into your probably already very busy work life?
I'll start. So we did get technical assistance from PIDC. We had boot camp. We had another company named Clarify that gave us different information about how it is that we should structure things. As a business owner, just being very honest, it's kind of like getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth. It's just something that you know to do as far as how it is that when something breaks, you need to fix it. How it is that it's, I don't even want to say second nature, it's almost like first nature. But PIDC did offer a lot of technical assistance, and I have to be very honest with you, it helped for me in a different way. So 2 weeks ago, I was feeling really run down and ragged, and I went to the hospital, and Marla Hamilton, something popped in her mind that she said, or that one of the other people at PIDC said. They said, will your business be able to run if you're not there? And, you know, thankfully that it was able to run. And of course, there was some challenges, you know, when I got back after being out for 3 days. But that popped into my mind. What have I put into place over all these years of being in business? What have I structured? What have I validated? Because if I'm in business 20 years and I can't go for 3 days and everything falls apart, then I really haven't done a good job of being a landlord.
Mhm.
And when I say landlord,
Yeah.
I mean a landlord over my business.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think for me it's very similar. Maintaining the building and maintaining the business are sort of like, you know, there's a very fine line between the two. So one of the things that I did is I did consult with a lot of people for advice. PIDC required that we provide a pro forma that showed, you know, the business model for here's how much the loans are going to cost and here's how much rent income we're going to generate from the business. And then there's also an apartment on the third floor. And so we had to demonstrate that, you know, that it was a viable project. And so then we consulted with our accountant and we set up a separate LLC just for the business, just for the building, separate from the design practice, separate from my personal name, so that it is so on paper it is a separate little business, separate account, separate checking account, separate expense reports and everything. So when I have to fix something, I have to decide whether it's a landlord improvement or a tenant improvement, and so then, you know, that kind of tells me, you know, which funds it comes out of, or and who pays for it. So, for example, if we, you know, we put some signage on the building, so that was a tenant cost, but we had to put a gate on the side entrance alleyway, and that's a landlord cost. So, you know, those kinds of things need to be managed carefully. And so to that extent, you know, it's just another kind of layer of taking care of the paperwork and making sure that everything is organized and records are kept neatly. So thankfully I have a good bookkeeper that does that for me.
Yeah. Mhm.
Great, thank you. I'll maybe ask one more question. So, and this is maybe more for you, Art. I know I work with a lot of commercial corridor managers, and one of the challenges that they've faced when thinking about owning property or purchasing property on the corridor is absentee owners that you just can't even get in touch with to even engage with them about selling. Is that something that PIDC can help with, or do you have any kind of recommendations or suggestions for how to actually get through?
Yeah, that's a tough one. If they're really not like, or they're absentee, like they live out of state, that's hard to get their attention. What we do, you know, at PIDC is sometimes we can provide like a term sheet. So that would help to kind of incentivize the owner of the property to respond. And once they see some dollar signs, like say, you know, we can provide a term sheet that says XYZ business can afford and, you know, is willing to purchase this property for $500,000, example. You know, that at least gets the conversation going, at least elicits a response. We've seen that sometimes. Yeah, and it starts a negotiation process. So we don't, that's the hardest part, is really just getting a response and getting them to the table. And that's one way we can do is through like providing a term sheet, kind of pre-approval, you know, of that. But yeah, that's something that you know, we know that a lot of business owners don't own their properties, and sometimes they don't even know they're owners of their business. They just work with a property manager. So that is a challenge that we've heard a lot, unfortunately. But the term sheet does help to move the conversation.
Great, thank you. So just a reminder, folks, if you have any final questions, put them in the Q&A. I'm going to ask you all one final question. So if there are no more that come in the Q&A, we can wrap up afterwards. But I'm wondering if, you know, all of you can share you know, if you have any kind of closing thoughts. How has COVID change, if you knew what you knew months ago because of COVID, would that have changed the decision that you made? Or how has COVID affected your business, and how does being a property owner factor into that in any way, if it does?
You want to go first, David?
I'm just gonna get out the way. If I knew what I knew months ago, would I change being a business owner? Absolutely not. As I said before, I came from the hellhole to the palace. But more importantly than that is this. A business owner doesn't need COVID-19 to pivot. A business owner that loves what it is that he do, and I'm passionate about what I do, I didn't need COVID-19 to figure it out. So it kind of came second nature for me when I took everything that weekend that we had parties that were canceled and designed my menu for my output that Tuesday. I had 3 parties canceled that Saturday. I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change a thing about my rental situation. It's helped me to get to where I'm at. I'm the kind of person that likes to figure it out. I'm the kind of person that I like to create fail-safes. So for me, as a fail-safe in my businesses, on our company trucks, I keep sternos, I keep a hot plate, I keep cutting boards, I keep extra forks, extra knives, extra napkins, extra plates, all of these extra things. So when you get to an event and someone that packed your pack out for you, they didn't have it, well, there's no excuse. Oh, well, I didn't have a lighter or match. Well, you had a hot plate that when you turn the hot plate on, it's fire. So I don't want to hear about you didn't have a match to light the sternos. So in these COVID times, I just look at it as, yes, it's challenging. And although I did not have to apply for forbearance, I'm not looking at this as a way that, oh my God, the world is coming to an end. No, I'm looking at this as I've been taught to prosper. I'm looking at this from a different standpoint, is not how to just survive, but how am I going to thrive? Like, what banquet hall is going out of business? What caterer is going out of business? How it is that I can get another contract? Who can't make it to PHA next year? Who can't make it to the Mann Center? Who it is that may not be able to? How it is that I can do? You know, sometimes we have to work a little harder, and I know that every business owner is working harder now during COVID times, but nobody said that this was going to be a Judy Garland skip up the Yellow Brick Road pattern, and one day we're going to magically appear at Oz. Let's remember, along the way of Oz, we encountered all of those things before we got to Oz, and that's my closing thought.
That's a good segue for OZ Collaborative.
Yes.
So I want to back up to when I started Olaya Studio in 2006 and thought, you know, this is the best thing in the world. And then the recession happened in 2008. And everybody said, well, your timing is just great, you know? And there's really no way of anticipating when is a good time to do what you're doing. And so I think what I'm doing, and I think what David's doing, is thinking long term. And the big picture here is that I would still have purchased and renovated this building. And like in 2008 through 2010, you know, we were just doing whatever we could to figure out where the projects were, to figure out where the clients were, and to figure out how to win those proposals, to be able to stay afloat, to be able to survive, to get to the point where things are healthier. So, you know, we are now in a similar situation where we're trying to realize, okay, what the heck's going on with our clients? Every single project that we had in March came to a screeching halt, just about. Every project that was about to start construction completely stopped. Every proposal that was about to be awarded or to be issued for bidding completely was postponed. Projects that were not already securely funded were canceled. Projects that were questionable as to whether they were needed from the institutional side, they postponed those and put them on the shelf. And so all of a sudden, everything that we were doing was being affected left and right. And so it totally caught us way by surprise, more so than what I had anticipated. Universities were scrambling because they didn't know what was going to happen in the fall, and they still don't. And private developers were freaking out. So all of that was affecting our work. We're kind of like the canary in the coal mine. When you see a project, you see a crane, and you see a construction site, you know, those designs were done a year ago or a year and a half ago. And so when the project is scheduled to happen a year from now, we're working on the design right now. And so if the developer or the institution has an issue or sees that there's something going on, they're going to tell us to stop. We're going to be the first ones in that chain, that long chain of people involved in a project. We're going to be one of the first ones to be affected by that. So we definitely are trying to understand how to continue to serve our clients. And we feel like the ability to have PIDC as a partner, I think actually helped us. And this isn't a shallow plug, but I think the forbearance, ability to have that forbearance for a few months, I think was super helpful. And I'm extremely grateful for that. I think had we been in a conventional lease as a renter, you know, I don't know what would have happened. We might have had to have had like really uncomfortable conversations with the landlord and concessions. And so that's really, you know, a kind of a good luck, bad luck scenario. And so I think it's fortunate that we are where we are. And I think having the building gives us some leverage to be able to, you know, to be able to adjust as we need to in order to get through to the next phase. And so, I would still have done it in the exact same way. I think now the challenge is just to kind of focus on the business once again and figure out how do we continue serving our clients, and how do we figure out where our clients are going. That's really kind of the bottom line. I think I'm hoping that we can define what work looks like moving forward, because that's not going to go back to what it was. I don't think we're going to wishing for things as they were, I think is a false chase, a false narrative. I think we are to understand that there's a new way of how we're working and how we are, what the work landscape looks like and the physical landscape looks like. And so every business is getting affected by that. So we're trying to stay on top of that. Maybe that's my closing remark.
Thank you. We have no more questions. So Art, I'll leave it up to you as how you'd like to wrap us up.
Well, I once again thank you, David and Richard, for making the time today and sharing your thoughts. I think we learned a ton about, you know, the pros and cons of owning a property and the value of being an owner on a commercial corridor, and kind of the nuances of I guess I want to say like ownership and gentrification. So thank you so much for sharing your stories, and thank you for the kind plugs. I mean, I think that's really helps me personally love what I do at PIDC, and you know, and Beth, thank you again for giving us this opportunity to talk about these topics with our audience. And yeah, I just want to share that I did read an article about kind of office space and how that's going to be, like the importance of that moving forward. And a lot of people did talk about how, like, no, now it's like a lot of office can work remotely, or you know, the office is done. But I read this article in the Wall Street Journal about kind of what the future hold, and it was a little positive in the sense that I think it is gonna change, like to your point, Richard, that I think there will be some changes now moving forward, but it's not gonna be, I think office spaces will still continue to exist and have a place in the economy, and definitely downtown. But I think we also talk about, like, you know, you guys can talk about like productivity. Has productivity been affected because now people working remotely? Like a lot of companies, maybe some people initially were able to jump on Zoom calls and adapt quickly, but in the long term, is that sustainable? So maybe that's my parting thoughts is, you know, and I think there's still there's still opportunities for us to pivot and to go back to the way things were, but there are also going to be some changes as well. But I might have digressed there a little, but yeah, thanks again for this opportunity, Beth, Richard, and David, and yeah, and best of luck.
Thank you. This is a good conversation. I really appreciate being part of it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. And just a reminder to join us for our the third installment in our Equitable Development Conference series. You can check out our website when registration will open soon. Thank you all again.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.